What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. It's been a few days since we've gotten any significant Season of Discovery updates or changes to the gameplay or core mechanics, but tomorrow, December 12th, with our weekly scheduled maintenance, we have some serious class tuning coming. So without further ado, guys, let's dive in. Okay, so posted 27 minutes ago by Rockman, class tuning incoming December 12th Season of Discovery. Tomorrow, with scheduled weekly maintenance in each region, we're going to implement some adjustments based on class performance and feedback. So for Druids, it looks like we have Star Surge rune ability damage increased 182%. That is really nice. Star Surge cooldown has been reduced to 6 seconds, down from 10 seconds. And Star Surge mana cost reduced to 1% of your base mana, and it was 3. So it looks like they're buffing Boomkins a little bit here. As we know, if you've raided with any or had any in your dungeons, their damage wasn't there. So this might help them a little bit. Having a lower cooldown on Star Surge and increased damage and a lower mana cost is pretty big. So I guess we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. Maybe their damage will be increased by a significant enough amount where they will be taken into raids. As for Hunter, Flanking Strike now gains the benefit of weapon enhancements like Sharpening Stones, is now on global cooldown, and is now properly treated as a melee attack, letting it benefit from attack power and combat modifiers to dodge, parry, block, crit, and hit, etc. Flanking Strike is now prevented by Pacify. Flanking Strike now requires a weapon equipped. That's interesting. Flanking Strike pet damage is now properly treated as a melee attack, with same benefits as listed above for the Hunter's damage. And then they have a little note down here at the bottom saying additional changes to normalize Hunter pet performance are still to be determined. Okay, so some changes to Flanking Strike there. I think they're trying to incentivize melee hunters a little bit more because as of right now, they're really not performing. And then it's really interesting to see that they are still thinking about the hunter pet performance as if like maybe it shouldn't be normalized yet, but I mean, it's still way out of control. But I mean, you know what? They've brought it down to a manageable level where they're not skyrocketing off the charts at this point. But obviously they're saying that it's still to be determined. So I guess we could wait and see if they're going to change anything else there. So for priests, we have Priest's homunculi damage increased by 100%, Void Plague damage increased by 200%, Twisted Faith now increases damage done by Mind Blast and Mind Flay. Twisted Faith now increases damage done by Mind Blast and Mind Flay by 50%, and it was 20% on targets afflicted with Shadow Word Pain. So these priest changes right here are really, really interesting. This is just straight up buffs across the board to just straight up damage buffs. So I'm really curious to see how they're going to perform. It may make them actually viable at this point. A lot of people I know, were playing Shadow Priest and they immediately re-rolled after they hit 25 and started running dungeons and things like that. But this seems to be like it might be changing the game a little bit. So I'm actually pretty excited to see how this plays out. I know I have a friend who will be so pumped if this stuff works out for them. And then we have Rogue. Saber Slash, Shiv, Main Gouge will now properly consume Remorseless Attacks, which for those of you who don't know, Remorseless Attacks is after you kill an enemy that yields experience or honor, it gives you a 40% increased critical strike chance on your next Sinister Strike, Backstab, Ambush, or Ghostly Strike. So Saber Slash, Shiv, and Main Gouge will now be affected by that as well. Saber Slash's tooltip was fixed, damage not reduced. Saber Slash damage is now properly considered a bleed and benefits from the Mangle debuff. So technically rogues are getting a little bit of a buff here too. They're going to have more damage. Note, bleed immune creatures will no longer be affected by it. Saber Slash's bleed was not being affected by Mangle. It wasn't being increased, and it looks like now it is, so that's going to up Rogue's damage by a little bit, and I'm curious to see some logs after these lockouts. It shouldn't be a crazy amount, right, because the bleed damage at this level isn't that significant, but it is going to be an increase. And then for Shamans, we have Lava Lash damage increased to 150% weapon damage. It was 100% weapon damage, so a 50% buff on Lava Lash's damage right there. Lava Lash mana cost reduced to 1% of base mana. It was 4%. So across the board, Lava Lash has now been buffed. It does 50% more damage, and it costs 3% less base mana. Overload now has a 50% chance to trigger. It was 33%, so that's going to help out some Ellie Shamans a little bit there. And dual wield specialization now grants 10% increased chance to hit while dual wielding. That is humongous. So it looks like Shamans, again, across the board, just all buffs right here. I'm curious to see what their damage is going to look like. It was kind of mediocre before. It wasn't that great, so I'm interested to see how this plays out in this week's raid lockouts. And then we have the Boon of Blackfathom. World buff has been adjusted. It now provides 3% spell hit and 25 spell power buff, in addition to the other physical damage and movement speed effects. It was spell crit. This is nice. So you're now getting 3% spell hit and 25 spell power from the Boon of Blackfathom. This is a huge W for all our casters out there. And then under that, we have developer notes. Spellcasters in general are struggling a bit in BFD, mostly due to poor scaling without spell power and a higher requirement of spell hit to reliably hit creatures 2+ levels above the caster. Keep those chrono boons handy and don't stand in the fire and lose your buff. Regarding the Hunter Pet performance note above, we will let you know as soon as we've finalized this hotfix. We really like Hunter Pets being able to occasionally do some raid or dungeon tanking, but it was never intended for them to be the best tanks in the game. So overall, guys, across the board, it looks like we have some serious buffs going out. For our Priest, this is huge. Priest buff is amazing. The Rogues are getting a little bit of a buff here. Shamans buffs across the board. All casters in general with the Boon of Blackfathom. These are just some serious buffs, and I'm really excited to see how this plays out, right? This might change a lot of stuff. For the Druids, I don't think their buff was that massive. I don't think this is going to really change, you know, where Boomkins stand in regards to damage output in raids. I still think they may be lacking a little bit when compared to other classes. But the changes to Flanking Strike are nice. It seems like they're really trying to push this melee hunter thing, so I'm really curious to see that. I personally, the first week, you know, I saw melee hunters everywhere. I don't see a single melee hunter anywhere as of right now, so I'm really curious to see how this plays out. And Priests, this is going to be huge. I really do think this is going to help them out a lot. They were like kind of in a decent spot to like maybe do better next phase. But they just didn't have it all right here in this phase. Like there was no way they were going to compete with other classes. So maybe this will push them over that line, and maybe they'll now be a competitive DPS. We got to wait and see. And, you know, Rogues getting an increased damage from their bleed. You know, it's going to benefit from the Mangle debuff, which will increase the damage that the bleed does. This is not a massive buff, but it's definitely something that should have been in from the beginning, right? So we're going to actually be able to see their true damage from Saber Slash. And then Shamans, again, across the board, just a massive buff. For any of you Shaman enjoyers out there, let me know how you feel about this change. But I just am finishing getting my second character to 25, which is a Warlock, so I'm really excited to see these Boon of Blackfathom changes with the spell hit and the spell power. So let me know what you guys think about all these changes down in the comments below. But that's all I've got for you today. So if you enjoyed this, hit that like button. It really does help me out a lot. And subscribe to the channel. Turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next time I post a video. And if you guys want to hang out with me live, I do stream on Twitch Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern time at twitch.tv/hammerdance. There'll be a link to that in the description below this video. And if you want to join an awesome Discord community full of a bunch of people who are just geeking out over SOD and WoW Classic constantly, we will welcome you with open arms. There'll be a link to the Discord in the description as well. But anyways, guys, that's all I've got for you today. So thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I'll see you all in the next one.